All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible feats in all of biology, the relentless, powerful beat of the human heart. It is an absolute marvel of engineering, and today we're going to break down exactly how it works, right down to the microscopic level. I mean, really think about that for a second. Over 100,000 times, every single day for your whole life. It never gets a coffee break, never takes a vacation. So how on earth does it pull off this incredible marathon without ever stopping for a rest? Well, the answer is just, it's elegant. Turns out, it all comes down to these three key players. You've got an electrical spark, a flood of calcium, and a team of amazing proteins. When these three get together, they perform this perfectly choreographed dance that, well, that is a heartbeat. So let's start at the very beginning with that spark. Every single beat of your heart starts with a command. And get this, it's not coming from your brain. The heart has its own built-in pacemaker cells that generate a tiny electrical signal. It's basically the starting pistol for the entire race. So imagine that electrical signal as a message that's zipping down a whole network of microscopic wires. These wires, they're called T-tubules, and they dive deep inside the heart muscle cells. This makes sure that the command to contract is delivered instantly and to every single part of the cell at the exact same time. But this electrical message, it's just step one. Okay, now we get to the really cool chemical part of this whole thing. That electrical spark is about to set off a chain reaction, a beautiful cascade that's going to amplify this signal from just a tiny little whisper into a powerful roar. As that electricity travels down the line, it hits these special channels. You can think of them like voltage-operated doors. They swing open for just a split second, and that lets a small, little puff of calcium sneak into the muscle cell. Now, this tiny bit of calcium, it isn't nearly enough to actually cause a contraction. Nope, it has a much, much cleverer job to do. And this, right here, is the secret to the heart's power. The whole system is called calcium-induced calcium release. It's just a brilliant biological amplifier. That first little puff of calcium is about to trigger a massive secondary release. It's amazing. So that initial puff of calcium, think of it like a key. It floats over and unlocks a second set of doors on this huge internal storage tank. It's called the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And when those doors swing open, a massive flood of calcium is unleashed from storage right into the main part of the cell. And boom, that is the calcium spark. The cell is now completely saturated with calcium ions. The electrical signal has been perfectly translated into a powerful chemical signal, and the stage is finally set for the main event, the actual physical contraction of the muscle. Okay, so we've got the signal and we've got the flood of calcium. But how does this actually make the muscle get shorter and create force? Well, this is where our amazing protein machinery comes into play, in a process we call the sliding filament model. Let's meet our two main players, actin and myosin. The easiest way to think about them is that actin is like a long, thin rope. Myosin, on the other hand, he's the puller. It's got these tiny little heads that are just dying to grab onto that actin rope and pull. Now, obviously, in a resting muscle, we can't just have myosin grabbing and pulling whenever it wants. So the actin rope has a built-in safety. It's a pair of proteins, troponin and tropomyosin, and they literally wrap around the actin, physically blocking the spots where myosin wants to grab on. It's a safety lock. And this is where that calcium flood becomes the absolute star of the show. Calcium is the key that unlocks that safety. When all that calcium floods the cell, it binds to the troponin protein. And that simple action causes the whole safety complex to change shape and roll out of the way, exposing all those juicy binding sites on the actin rope. So with the safety off, the engine can finally roar to life. First, the myosin heads grab onto that now exposed actin rope. Then you get the power stroke. The heads pivot and pull the actin filament inwards. That's it. That's the contraction. To let go, a new energy molecule, ATP, comes along and tells the myosin to release. And finally, the myosin uses that energy to pop back to its starting position, ready to grab and pull all over again. This cycle happens thousands of times in a split second. It's the engine of your heartbeat. A contraction is great, but the heart also has to relax so it can refill with blood. That means this entire system has to be reset almost instantly. The cleanup process, it's just as critical as the contraction itself. So to stop the contraction, you have to get rid of the calcium. The cell has two really clever ways of doing this. First, you've got these powerful pumps called circa that use energy to literally force all that calcium back into the storage tank. At the same time, other channels on the cell's surface are kicking calcium out of the cell completely. As the calcium levels drop, that troponin safety lock clicks back into place and the muscle relaxes, ready for the next beat. So we've gone from an electrical spark to a flood of calcium to proteins playing tug of war. It's a pretty amazing microscopic world, right? But how does understanding all this actually help us in, a real-world hospital? You've probably heard of this, right? Someone goes to the emergency room with chest pain, and one of the first things they get is a blood test to check their heart. So how can what's happening inside these tiny little cells tell a doctor what's going on with the entire organ? Well, the answer lies in what happens when these delicate little cells get damaged or die, which is exactly what happens during a heart attack. When the cell wall breaks down, all of that internal machinery we just talked about, including those troponin proteins, it just spills out and leaks into the bloodstream. And doctors are looking for one thing in particular, cardiac troponin. Remember, that's our safety lock protein. Because these proteins should only be inside heart muscle cells. Finding them just floating around in your blood is a huge red flag. It's a very specific, very sensitive sign that heart muscle has been damaged. And this is incredibly useful for telling the difference between two things that can feel really similar. With unstable angina, blood flow is tight, it's causing pain, but the muscle cells aren't dying yet, so troponin levels are normal. In a full-blown heart attack, those cells are dying and breaking open, causing troponin levels to shoot way, way up. This simple test gives doctors a clear, definitive answer. What's also super helpful is that the troponin test gives doctors a window into when the damage happened. The levels start to climb a few hours after the event, they hit their peak around 12 to 24 hours later, and they can actually stay elevated for up to 2 weeks. It's just an incredibly valuable tool for diagnosis. Now, one final really important piece of context. While troponin is a fantastic indicator, it technically signals cardiac muscle damage, which isn't only caused by heart attacks. Other conditions that put a lot of stress on the heart, like severe heart failure, massive infections, or even kidney failure, can also cause troponin levels to go up. So doctors always use this test as one very powerful piece of a much larger diagnostic puzzle. So from a single spark to a flood of ions to a protein power stroke, this tiny, tiny molecular engine is what powers your entire life, beat after relentless beat. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other incredible microscopic secrets are hiding inside your body, just working away perfectly right now?